Alright, so what if we run into a system like this here and it asks us to solve the system? One of the three ways we can solve it is elimination. And we're going to talk about this idea of elimination and how we can use elimination to solve a system. So first of all, when we think about this, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. When it says solve the system, this idea of solve is to find the x and y values that are going to make both of these equations true. So find the x and the y. And so we're going to actually have two answers, and that's important when you're solving a system, that you understand that you're looking for the x and the y such that 7 times x plus 6 times whatever your y is really is equal to negative 6. And also negative 7 times x minus 2 times the y equals negative 26. So we're going to find the x and y that makes both equations true. And that's our goal. We want to find something that's going to work in both of them. Yeah, you'll be surprised it's pretty easy to find answers that make this top equation true. But it won't make the bottom equation true. So find an x and y that makes both equations true. That's our goal when it says solve a system. So we got to make sure we keep working until we actually do our goal, find x and y. It also says solve the system. Remember, system is 2 or more equations. In this case, we have 2 equations with 2 or more of the same variables. So we have an x and a y in both of these. So this is indeed a system, so we're good to go. The process of elimination is a pretty quick process, and it uses, I guess, basically the addition property of equality, and it allows us to eliminate, or the goal is to eliminate one of the variables so we can solve for the other one. And the most basic process, let's just do one real quick and then we can explain it. The most basic process is this. We're going to combine these two equations together. We're going to just kind of add straight up and down, just like if you were going to add 14 to 23, you would add straight down. 4 plus 3 is 7, 1 plus 2 is 3, and you would get an answer of 37. We're going to add straight down these problems. What happens when we add straight down is we eliminate one of the variables, because this problem is already set up for elimination. 7x minus 7x, that cancels out, so we don't have to put anything down here. And then we have a positive 6y. Take away 2y. You always want to follow the signs in front of the number. So 6y's take away 2y's would leave me 4y's. And then over here, past the equal sign, and again I'm going to write down the equal sign, negative 6 minus 26. So negative 6 subtract 26 more would be a negative 32. What you'll notice then is what we did is we eliminated one of the variables. We had equations with x and y. Now we just have an equation with y, which is very easily be solvable because it's just a one-step equation. And so to solve this, we're going to get rid of a times 4 by dividing by 4, and we're going to get y equals negative 8. Now you might be tempted to stop here, but if you remember what we said the definition of solving a system means, it's find the x and the y that makes both equations true. We just found the y, so we're only halfway to our goal. We're only halfway to our goal. We still have to find x. So there's still another part. Still need to find x. Again, this worked before we kind of go any farther. It worked because there was a positive 7x. Well, what eliminates or what cancels out a positive 7x is a negative 7x. If this wasn't a negative 7x, then this probably wouldn't have worked the way it did. But this problem was set up, and since we're just talking about the basics elimination, it was ready to go. So now we want to find x. So we got another step to do. Our next step to find x is to basically go back and plug in our y into either one of these equations. And it doesn't matter which equations you pick. So you really have two equations, equation 1 and equation 2. It doesn't matter which equation you pick, but I'm going to bring down equation 1, which said 7 times your x value plus 6 times your y value equals negative 6. That's what it said. Well, now I know something I didn't know before. I know what y is. So I can rewrite this as still 7 times x, but instead of 6 times y, it's really 6 times negative 8. That's equal to negative 6. Well, 6 times negative 8 is negative 48, and so I can even clean that up more. And as I clean it up, I realize this is just a two-step equation that I can solve just by the way I always solve, just farthest away, undo, undo. So if I want to solve for x, I just get rid of the minus 48 by adding 48. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And I get 7x is equal to 48 minus 6 is 42. Divide by 7 on both sides. And I get x is equal to 6. So now did I do what the directions asked? Did I solve? It says find x and y that make both equations true. X is 6 and y is -8. I'm pretty sure this will work in both, but you can always check. You can just go back to the top equation and say, is 7 times 6, because x is 6, plus 6 times -8 equal to -6? Well, 42 minus 48 really would be -6, so it works in the top equation. And if you want to plug it into this one, again, I'm doing some mental math, but you can do it on your calculator. -7 times 6 is -42. -42 minus -2 times -8 is a +16. So -42 plus 16 is -26. So my x and y work in both. Now, a lot of times answer keys and stuff will write these answers as an ordered pair, like a point on a line. So a very traditional answer would look something like this. You would say your solution to this system is 6, -8. And that's kind of the basics of elimination. Our goal is to add both equations together, to combine them. And when we do that, we eliminate one of the variables. And once we eliminate one of the variables, we can solve. Once we find one of them, we can plug it back in to find the other. This might seem a little strange, but really all we're doing is we're adding the same thing to both sides of this equation using the addition property of equality. We're adding what I know is -26 to this side, and I'm adding what I know is -26 to this side. It just doesn't look like this is -26 that I'm adding to this, but it really is, because this equal sign tells me they're equal. And so I can just combine them, and it works like that. Those are pretty basic ones. There's one other type that you might run into, and so I just wanted to show you that. And if you have questions, of course, you can always ask. But let's look at another system that we run into quite a bit. So same directions, solve the system. But this time it's x plus 6y equals -6, and 4x plus 6y equals -24. And the same directions are there, solve the system, which means find the x and y that makes both equations true. Well, what makes this one different, and I guess we should just say, last time when we added them up, we eliminated the x's. You don't always have to eliminate the x's. You can eliminate the x's or the y's as long as you're eliminating one variable. Elimination method works just fine. In this case, if I just added these straight down, x plus 4x would be 5x, so x's would not be eliminated. 6y plus 6y would be 12y, so the y's wouldn't be eliminated. And -6 minus 24 is -30. So if I just add straight down, nothing actually eliminates. And so it takes a little bit of forethought just to kind of look ahead and say, well, an x is never going to cancel with a 4x, but the y's look like they should cancel. But they're both positive y's. And if you want them to cancel, what actually cancels a positive 6y is a -6y. And this is the part where I really love algebra, is I really wish this was a -6y. Well, in algebra, if it's not like you want it, just make it. There's rules, as long as we're consistent and we do the same thing to each side, we can do whatever we want. So we're going to multiply this whole equation here by -1. When I multiply everything on this equation by -1, it changes all of the signs. So this positive 6y now becomes a -6y. This positive 4x becomes a -4x. And this -24 becomes a positive 24, because when I multiply it by -1, -24 times -1 is positive. So basically I just change this equation, so now I can eliminate. Now to eliminate, I combine the equation straight down. So I have 1x, again x is just 1x, minus 4x is -3x. 6y minus 6y, now here's where they eliminate. They're going to cancel each other out, so I don't need that anymore. And then on this side, -6 plus, now again that's plus, -6 plus 24, or 24 minus 6, that would be 18. Notice I eliminated the y. By eliminating the y, I can now solve for the x. So to solve for this x, I'm just going to divide by -3. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And I get x is equal to -6. Now again, I'm not done until I find the y. And when you go to find the y, you can come back up and use equation 1. You can use the original equation 2, or you could use the changed equation 2, the one that we changed all the signs around. all of the equations are equivalent. All the equations have the same x and y's. They all have to work in any of the equations, so it doesn't matter which one you pick. I like to pick the one I think is simplest, the one I didn't mess with, and that one is going to be x plus 6y equals negative 6. So I just copied down equation 1, but this time I know something I didn't know at the very beginning. I know that x is negative 6. So I can replace this x with negative 6. I don't have to multiply it by anything because there's nothing in front of it. Plus 6y is equal to negative 6. And now I'm going to go ahead and solve it. Farthest away from the y is the minus 6. So I'm going to add 6. So at this step, I just want to solve for y. We use the same kind of methods we always do, which is start farthest away and undo. So that cancels out. I get 6y is equal to 0. Which might seem a little strange, but we're still trying to get rid of a times 6, so you divide by 6. 0 divided by 6 is just 0, so I get an answer of y equals 0. So what I'm saying then, the x and y that makes both these equations true, the x has to be negative 6 and the y has to be 0. We like to write our answer as an ordered pair, and so we'll write our answer this way. The solution is negative 6 comma 0. And the best thing to do when you're done is just to double check quickly that it works in both equations. If we plug it into this top equation, is negative 6 plus 6 times 0? Well, 6 times 0 is 0. So is negative 6 plus 6 times 0 equal to negative 6? Yes, it is. Negative 6 is equal to negative 6. And then if we look at our other equation, maybe it's worth writing down. Our other equation said 4 times x plus 6 times y was equal to a negative 24. Well, 4 times a negative 6 is a negative 24. 6 times 0 is 0. So yes, negative 24 is equal to negative 24. It did work in both. And so we did come up with the right solution. So elimination is all about eliminating a variable. What makes sometimes it different is when you go to combine the two equations, sometimes the numbers don't naturally cancel out. Like this was a positive 6 and this was a positive 6, so we had to make one of them negative. Just remember, when you change one part of an equation, you have to change everything. We have to be fair. We technically took this entire equation and multiplied it by negative 1. We times it by negative 1, which changed all the signs. We're allowed to do that. But once this was a negative 6y, then they would cancel out. All right, that's the elimination. Hopefully it makes sense. If you have questions, always ask.